A lot of people have seen your film already, which is kind of why we're here. But for those who haven't seen your film yet, how would you describe it? What's the sort of short pitch of your film?
Nobody's asked me to do this before. The short pitch of The Welshman it's a story about Owain Williams. But I think a lot of people, when they think of Owain, they just think of Trewedyn. But it's not about that. It's about his life story, really, or as much as I could cram into 38 minutes. He was very passionate in his younger days, and some people think his actions were a bit extreme. Some people think that they were, quite just. It's about time in Welsh history when we were incredibly repressed. I know we still are now, but incredibly repressed then. And he was really standing up for what he believed in and sort of took measures into his own hands, really. So, without giving it away.
Anyone watching this now will now pause the interview, watch the film, and then when they come back, I'll assume everyone has seen the film now. But there's just like 5 people who hadn't seen it. So, I was going to ask you, before you even started making this film, do you have any background in either marketing or exhibition or distribution, or are those all kind of new areas for you?
No, not massively. I've always done independent films independently, and always sort of put myself out there, I guess in a sort of marketing kind of way, because I just found it would help me obviously get more work.
Yeah.
So, but prior to The Welshman, not to the extent that we did. So, I mean, I had some knowledge of it. I'd tried a few, bits over the years with little films I'd put out, or I kind of knew what worked. I just hadn't really had a project like The Welshman to really see how much it could work.
Well, and we found out it worked loads. No, amazing. And so when we were talking a little bit, and we've spoken before about how the film came together. It kind of came together kind of organically. But once you had a sense of what the film might be, did you fairly quickly then have an idea of where you wanted to show it and how you wanted it to be seen, or did that kind of idea come later on? That
came in the whole process of The Welshman was organic, and it was almost like each stepping stone was there at the moment that we needed it. Until that point, I hadn't necessarily processed it as a whole. And it wasn't really until, obviously, we got the trailer out there and things like that, and a mate of mine who knows the people that run Pwllheli Cinema said, they'd love to have it in Pwllheli Cinema, because Owain's from there, and things like that. And it was like a penny dropped in my head, and I was like, yeah, of course, why doesn't it go to, local cinemas? What a great idea. So the moment I'd sort of finished speaking with him, got home and just emailed all the local cinemas, wrote out one email, with what I wanted to say, wording wise, changed the location, and then got emails. Spent a couple of days doing it really, and then just fired off emails, to as many local cinemas as I could. And to my surprise, didn't expect it. I just thought, I've always done that. Whenever I wanted to, I used to photograph live music and concerts and stuff, and make documentaries with maybe a band that's my favourite. I'd always email the press people and just be like, can I? Because I've always been under the impression if you don't ask, you just don't get. Yeah. So that's what I was doing with The Welshman, the same sort of habits as email, just fire some stuff off, see who comes back. And 90% of cinemas were like, yes, yes, yes. And I was just like, what? How had it never occurred to me before to kind of picture a film to art centres especially,
And then, as I'm discovering today and on all these series of events, is Welsh cinema managers and exhibitors are excellent people.
They're brilliant.
And very collegial as well, and always kind of looking to help.
Yeah, and support and especially locally, just brilliant.
That's good. I was going to say, actually, even just picking up on when you said about the trailer coming out, because I think we spoke quite early on. I'm not even sure you'd done much of the tour before, but very early on, you got very high numbers of trailer views and sort of engagement. Was that something that just happened? Were there tipping points you could see? Were there things you did to kind of you could see had the effect of bringing it to that many people? Because it really engaged very early on.
Yeah, it was something like 24,000 in 24 hours.
Yeah.
Which it was. I think we checked the numbers and things like that, and it was so close to being viral. If it had been something like 26,000 or something, it would have been classed as a viral sort of thing. Right. So there were things that, I never expected it to do that. I was hoping it would sort of, catch on a little bit, but not go viral. I didn't think that would happen, So even with the trailer, before the Welshman was, I think it was very nearly finished, not sort of mixed, not sort of, maybe not fully graded. I uploaded it to online and like privately, and sent it to a few people that I'd met in the industry over the years, just to kind of get quotes for it. And that started first off with Georgia Gruber and Jonathan Gruber, and Jonathan Gruber is the director of The Butterfly Effect and Final Destination, and the writer. And I'd worked with him on a feature film doing stills photography about a year prior, and got on really well with Georgia, his wife. She's a Welsh producer. And she said to me, anything at all, just anything you need or anything you want, get in contact. And I just thought, this is the moment. This is when I need something, this is when I need you to watch something for me. And so sent it to her. Didn't expect to get a quote off Jonathan as well, but they watched it together that evening. And he fired me up a quote as well. And I was like, my mind, because for me, The Butterfly Effect as a kid, as a teenager, was what made me want to make films. And so he gave us a quote. Georgie gave us a quote, both really positive, and I thought, I'm off to a good start here. Yeah. So then I emailed it to Hugh Stevens, just people that I'd maybe met, because I'd only bumped into Hugh once at the BAFTA Cymru Awards one year. Again, I was photographing that years ago. And I thought, he's Anglesey based, I've probably got friends in common with him on Facebook, maybe he'd say yes, And he did, and he got a quote to me, and I was like, what is going on?
Yeah, and that's now you've got the balls rolling.
Yeah, and the ball's rolling, and the things are positive, so that was a real confidence boost. And then obviously to put, they were for the poster really. Yeah. And then I thought I need to put a trailer together, hardest thing in the world, to get a good trailer together. It's to give just enough where you want to interest people, but not give too much away either, is really hard. To do that in 20-30 seconds is hard, And then all of a sudden I thought, I'll put the quotes on the trailer, And as soon as I did that, I was like, okay, this feels like it, trailer-wise, is going to get, hopefully, a good reaction, people will be listening and watching. And it worked, it did. That's one of the things I think that made people go, this film's like a big budget. Yeah. And we made it on nothing.
I think, though, my theory on marketing is that people really respond to confidence, and if you're saying this is a big deal, and these people, and I think so many things, that could have done better, but they weren't marketed with confidence.
Definitely,
if your confidence is sort of shining through,
that's true.
Then the audience sort of picks up on it. They don't go, oh, what a confident trailer.
No, but you feel it. It kind of comes across. It's strong, or it's I don't know, final almost. Because a lot of the projects I've done prior, I'm like, oh, are they finished? Even now with shots in the Welshman, I'm like, oh, I wish I'd just change that shot. You just keep working on stuff, but this really, by the time it had come to it, felt strong and complete, and we were ready and things like that. So
I was going to say also, like when you talk about those connections, that when people are young people or young filmmakers on film academy courses, we're often talking about how do you get connections and exposure and actually these are not obvious connections that you made, but just being out there and working and being open to possibility and hopefully and doing a good job so that people remember you.
Absolutely,
it's paid off in really unexpected ways.
Yeah,
too.
I'm not very good at networking. It doesn't come naturally to me at all. But what I'm finding as I get older as a filmmaker is that if I can sort of build natural relationships with people, like Georgia, genuinely, we got on really well. It was an easy relationship to make. Yeah. It was an easy email to send and say, hey, would you help me? It didn't feel like I was taking anything from her. It didn't feel, like it was a one-way thing. No. It was just like, would you mind watching it and tell me what you think, really? And if it's good, would you mind if I use a quote that you've said, So I think working in the industry, even if that's like just a week job or 2-day job or whatever, but you can be as authentic as you can and make genuine connections is so much better for me than just going to festivals and trying to see, trying to find an ally. It's not the same. I'm not good at it.
No, I think it comes much more organically the way you describe it as well. So.
And obviously if you're lucky enough to it's just getting your foot on a few different jobs or, saying yes to things is what I found was the biggest thing, is even if I'm really stretched, just say yes. And
eventually you move into the saying no stage, I guess.
I'm at that stage now and I hate it. I hate saying no to things, But so again, networking not great at, but if you can build good natural relationships, it's so much better. Yeah.
And bouncing into the trailer, actually, I was going to, when you mentioned about sort of crafting, because it is a difficult, I mean, I'm not saying that I've done it, but, you know, I appreciate it's difficult for those who do it, but, you know, trying to sell the idea of the story, sell that it's important, sell that it's worth your time. Were you also conscious of who you're trying to reach in terms of people that were familiar with the story already or people that didn't know the story? I mean, was that a tricky balance to kind of work out? Or?
Yeah, for me it was about, even though I knew people knew Owain's story and they knew it well, and they people that love Owain love him, you know. It was more about for the people who didn't know anything that had happened. Because up until hearing Owain's story, literally in the room with him, I didn't really know. I'd heard a little bit from what my partner Enki had told me about Llywelyn and some of the stuff he'd done, but I had no clue. It wasn't until I was sat there and I was like, what is coming out of his mouth? You know, this really needs to be a film. So I kind of wanted to treat the audience exactly how I was discovering things, you know. So trailer-wise, it was more about who's this man? Roughly what's he done? What was the kind of, what was dangerous about it for him, and then not giving too much away, but just kind of showing just enough of, so we get a tiny snippet of history, but that's about it.
I know. I think mysteries, again, I think lots of perfectly good things sort of underperform because they didn't put the mystery in, or or what's the what next. And
I think one of the only lines in the first trailer was something like, I carried a gun with me. You know, if it's, and it's just like, what, well, why did you carry a gun with you? You know? So that, it's almost really nerve-wracking, because I've just made another film, I had to do a trailer, and it's more nerve-wracking making the trailer, because you know, if you balls it up, then it's like, that's part of the marketing, you know, you want people to go and see it, you want people to kind of be intrigued to watch it. And so again, with that other trailer, I've just gone extreme with it. It's a bit like, it comes to the end of the 20 seconds and you're like, what did we just watch? You know, that's the kind of thing, but you want it. And the Welshman, again, with both trailers, was a little bit like that. Trailer 1 was really a bit like, oh my God, what's this about? I want to watch it. And trailer 2 just gave you a little bit more of an insight, but not too much, you know.
Did you find, did it always have the same title as well, the film, or was it?
It did, yeah.
And did that help as well, like that sort of, maybe identify as a homegrown story?
An unconscious title for me, really. It was, I didn't really overthink it. I'd thought for a while about it. I never really give anything I'm making a title until I'm maybe halfway through. And I'd done this really long intro, anybody that's seen the film. The title intro maybe feels a bit long. But I'd purposely done it because I knew that David, who did the music, he's great at scoring and soundtrack, and I just knew it was going to really lift the sort of intro, and I wanted it to feel big. And I remember playing it for somebody early on, just like the first sort of 5 minutes, like, oh, that intro's going to change, right? It's long, isn't it? I was like, no, it's not going to change. It's going to be that long, you know. And by the time then I'd got the title, that's where the name for the Welshman came from. I was like, well, what is Owain, you know, to Welsh people? What is he at heart, really? He's a true Welshman. He really stood up for what he believed in. He's still very passionate about it now. Simple title, tells you what it is on the tin, really. So I didn't really overthink it. It just naturally came with the sort of visuals and sort of Owain's nature, really. And then when it hung there for the whole of the title, I was like, it's definitely called The Welshman. So within the first sort of decision, the first sort of 10 minutes of going, is it The Welshman? By the time I'd got the music on and that intro was staying, I knew that was the title. And it
definitely seemed to land with people as well. Like, it's always a bit dangerous reading the comments, but when you've got something that's going, I would say that I've seen a lot of short films and a lot of short film trailers. They don't usually do 24,000 in a day.
No.
So I think to me that is viral. But like, are you reading the comments? Are you seeing how people are responding? What they're responding to?
Definitely, positive or negative. I'm a bit weird. I've always quite enjoyed like constructive criticism, but as an artist I'm like, well, if it doesn't make you feel something, then I've not done a good job. You know, if you feel happy, great. If you feel annoyed, great. It's making you feel, you know, having some sort of reaction. So I always would read the comments, but to see them being positive, and more than anything, people very like excited to finally have something that Welsh people that they felt was reflecting their history. Whereas maybe if stuff had been told in the past about Owain, it was maybe a bit censored or a bit told from maybe a more of an English perspective. And even though it's a film in English, I'm Welsh and he's very Welsh. Owain's obviously very Welsh. Owain was happy really as well as saying he's got a book as well and wanted to do that in English, so it would cross over. But yeah, to see Welsh people's reaction, and they were more proud and really excited to see finally something that was maybe treated cinematically and how it should, the Welsh history is amazing, and some of the even some of like the fairy tales and Mabinogi and things like that, they're really cinematic, but we don't really have a massive cinematic. I can't think of many films that are cinematic that are Welsh based.
No, really. They don't do it not in that. So sometimes, maybe in hopefully days gone by, that sometimes the Welshness was almost used as like a punchline or kind of a wacky kind of version. But sort of treating it with sort of
respect
grandeur and exactly,
a bit of a Celtic sort of feeling about it. I think people were really excited for that, which to me was felt really nice. Yeah.
And so the trailer's on. You had the foresight. You had your own dedicated counts for the film. Didn't you? So were you conscious that you were kind of getting this attention in this moment when the trailer came out?
Yeah.
But by then people following the accounts, then they also those are people you can sort of reach out to later or build a community around.
Yeah,
it as well.
I did. Again, things like that didn't occur to me until they were happening.
Right.
And then obviously. I don't know how many followers the Welshman's got. I think it's over 1,000 on Twitter, which again was mind-blowing because I just thought all it is a tool to literally just get out the trailer, some promo news, anybody that's kind of interested might follow. But people like instantly would follow and like and retweet and were just really supportive. And then again, it just led to, then as soon as, to be honest, it really made me up my game on what do we do with the film. Because up until that point, genuinely, I had no idea what we were going to do. I thought, I'll put it out on YouTube, maybe 1,000 people will watch it, it's done its job. Other people gravitate towards it over the years, and it's a good story, and it's getting Owain's story out there, that's what I wanted. I didn't think it would go to cinemas, and then I'd be looking at, doing Q&As or trying to get it sort of maybe on something like Netflix or Prime or something, So because of those social media platforms, it really made me think outside the box of, okay, this film needs to be treated special, with some sort of attention and special, not just sticking it up online and a few people watching it. Because of those things, it really helped elevate. Again,
it's sort of just organically.
The next stepping stone was there, just as we needed it, new
you were
idea.
Open to discovering it as well. Okay, so and also I'm going back and forth in time, but you contacted all the cinemas and you had these great responses. So now and this is sort of happening probably around the same time that you're getting all the trailer views and stuff like that. So then do you have to start basically planning a tour? Is it like being in a band on tour or something?
The thing I was conscious of as well was lockdown was just coming to an end. And things were just starting to reopen, and I thought, what a great first film for people to get to put bums back on the seats, So I was really conscious of the fact that there was no point me just doing a cinema run that lasted a month or 2 months. Almost a cinema run nearly lasted a year, and that was because of lockdown, really. Because it was like, I think the first cinema to show it was near Arddangos in Bethesda, and they showed it for I think 3 or 4 nights, and then the next cinema, can't remember which one it was, and I apologise, wasn't open for like another month. It's like, okay, let's stagger it. And then eventually, by the time we got to July, it was like a little mini tour. So we did Aberystwyth, which I think is still my favourite screening so far. It's such a stunning arts venue. So we did Aberystwyth and Cardiff, and we basically did about 4 or 5 days where we just travelled Wales. And luckily they all kind of coincided around the same sort of time, which was great. So I tried to step foot in every venue that I could. Because I thought that was important as well, to kind of meet people and,
And presumably some of these places are new to you as well. I mean, I'm sure
absolutely.
You've been to lots of them, but
Absolutely. I've been to Aberystwyth once before to see... The Kingsman with a friend of mine, and Taran was there, and that was special, and but that was about it. But when I walked into Aberystwyth Arts Centre, I'd forgotten just how big it was, So all those things added to it being really special, and I guess keeping momentum up for me as well as a filmmaker, was going, right, let's go to the next venue and let's, keep it going and keep that excitement going. So yeah, it was really, really good.
It seemed I could seeing updates on the tour, and you're like, this is going very well.
Yeah.
And were you when you had a screening, like obviously you've kind of made it, I'm sure some of them reached out to you, but you've made a lot of them happen by reaching out to the cinema as well. Are you taking some responsibility for also making sure that specific audience arrives and sort of
Absolutely.
and engaging with people in that place?
Yeah, because I would notice at the start, like I'd made this press folder and like a link for anybody that's got the link can just download what they want.
Yeah.
And I tried to put like a varied amount of stuff in there so that nothing felt regurgitated, that audiences weren't seeing the same thing over and over again. Because that, to me, as an audience member or as a social media user, I'm like, if I see something over and over again, I'm like, I get annoyed, So I was really conscious, if I did a press folder where you could just take what you wanted and the next person could take what they wanted and it all was a bit different, then that would work out really well. So I would end up sending that obviously to the cinemas. And as soon as I would post and I felt like I was the leader, they would follow. Because until that point, maybe they wouldn't have shared, or they might, but not as much as I would have been doing. So then I'd even put a trailer together with a date stamp on it with what cinema it was in, or, something that would just elevate it again. This is happening. It's going to be today or tomorrow, or it's in a week or whatever. Or it's nearly sold out, or, and again, luckily, because of COVID, there was a lot of the venues were at half capacity, so they were selling out, which was great, because as soon as you put sold out,
the brand on it is it's
true,
true,
but it just all helped the momentum of it. So every screening we would, like a week before, even more so, as soon as they were announced, we would be like, you can get tickets here with a link or a different image, or an image of that cinema maybe, or whatever it was, to vary all the media that was going out and it not feel sickening almost, because it can get like that.
This sounds incredibly competent, but also like quite a lot of hard work. So presumably it was. Like,
it was a lot of hard work. I mean, the first day, even getting the trailer out myself and he, who's produced the film as well, she's actually Owain's daughter.
Right. Yeah.
We've got a little cinema room at home, one spare room, and let's turn it into a cinema room. So we've got a little cinema room, sat in there together, she on her laptop, me on mine. And we had matchsticks in our eyes. Before we knew it, it's like one of those days where it'd gone dark. The room was dark. Like, maybe we should put a light on. But we'd been at it for probably 8 to 10 hours of just, who can we get it out to? We emailed like Golug and different press people and what kind of hashtags we're going to use on Twitter and where can we put it, and kind of getting the Twitter and Facebook and Instagram pages looking good before we even begin, and hours upon hours, and then as soon as that kicked off, it never dissipated. Those hours, it was just like it was, and that again was another reason for making sure that all of those things were accessible, whether I was at work, because I had a day job as well. If somebody emailed me to say, I have not got the link to download this file, I need a picture of the poster, I could just be like, it's in this folder, help yourself. And I wouldn't have to be sat at the computer. So trying to make things as simple in my world as well, to manage how much time it really took, because it was like having a newborn baby, really. That's what it was like. It needed constant love and attention to keep it going, and to keep momentum going. So just trying to simplify on my end as a sort of marketing or distributor, what's really easy, what's simple, what's quick, what's helping other people out, what's, if I write up a press release and send it to Daily Post, they literally have got to copy and paste it, put an image in and maybe put their own comment. Then you've got a press release, and they didn't really have to, they want that, that's what they want. They don't want to have to phone you and spend 20 minutes on the phone doing an interview and stuff like that.
You want to make it as straightforward as possible.
Yeah.
And was that, sorry, you might have said that earlier, but like, was that something you'd done before in terms of like press releases and newspapers and TV stations and stuff as well? Was that
none of that. I think I might have made a minor. I mean, they teach you how to do this in Bangor University as well. They will teach you log lines and synopsis, and trying to get like what they would call a treatment together, which you would tend to do maybe before the film. If you were trying to get funding for a film, that's what you do. So I kind of had an idea of what I would put in a press release. I was kind of mimicking that sort of vibe. And I think I might have made a mini one I had this short film called Bound a couple of years ago, and it went to a few film festivals and it did well on YouTube. So I think I did like a half a page with a photo and just a bit. So, but nothing like I'd done for the Welshman. It was anything I'd done prior. It was 10 steps up, you know.
Yeah.
Really tried to elevate it and more in depth, just more. I don't know, just easier for everybody to sort of access. So not really. I've not done anything like that.
Again,
it's good. Yeah.
It turned out good. It looked like you had. I was going to ask actually, what was what seemed to be the balance of both your time and also the payoff in terms of like social media, new media versus more traditional, you know, print media and broadcast as well?
I think obviously Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, things like that. It's so instant.
Yeah.
And getting like official press, so like it was actually Enki managed to get me on the cover of Golwg.
Right.
To have that go out was like, even though that's great for me as a filmmaker, what it was really doing was elevating the film to a different level again. It's like, hang on a minute, they're in a magazine. It's not just an online or Twitter, you know, sharing it. It's physically out there now as well. It's other people are paying attention. So the difference, I guess, was even though social media is great digitally and we get stuff out and it's like people are hearing about it and they can share, having it in physical print, so having newspapers or Golwg, say, was again just another level of promotion. Yeah. This is another level of this film is legit. It's doing well, and there's the hype there to see it, you know.
Yeah.
Because all of these things were helping us get it into other cinemas as well. So say we got 10 yeses from local cinemas, it meant we might get 10 yeses from other cinemas, you know, in England or whatever. So it all just helped elevate it, but definitely having it in print felt different to having it, you know, digitally out there. Yeah.
And also, I mean, I don't want to generalise too much, but because your film has been seen by a very wide age range of viewers. Yeah. And so, as a sort of slight average, older viewers might be more inclined towards print and less inclined towards Instagram. Yeah. Not exclusively, but is that true? Or did you find that you were reaching different ages of viewer by different media sometimes?
Yeah, I think that probably didn't occur to me until I think we were in Daily Post, and Owain reads Daily Post every day, so he gets the copy, and I think I'd forgotten to tell him about it. I didn't know what day it was going out, and he phoned and he was like, "Oh, you're in the Daily Post," you know, and so he'd come across that, whereas anything beforehand we would have been telling him, or you know, if you we would show him an article online, or you know, whereas it was more he'd phoned us and said, "You're in the paper," and we were like, "Are we?" You know, we'd forgotten that we weren't sure, you know, what day it would go out. So I guess in that respect he'd come across it because he reads it every day, whereas we hadn't, because I wouldn't necessarily buy the paper every day, you know. So definitely there's a crossover there that I hadn't really thought about.
But the same thing's happening to me now, because like I like to think I know what's going on, but if something's on TikTok, I have no idea what's happening on TikTok now. So there's like a whole media sort of form, but below me where other things could be happening and I wouldn't even know what was on there. No, great. So you've been, the tour was kind of ongoing, and were you finding actually that there were, I mean, you don't have to say, but like, were the things that worked particularly well for you in terms of sort of getting the word out, and were the things that maybe didn't work so well, or things that you know, or was it?
What didn't work well?
Or was it like, you know, the trailer worked better than the poster, or you know, I don't know what was.
Yeah, I think probably the trailer was a massive thing, because it's one thing showing a poster, but to actually give people a bit of excitement about how it's going to feel and how it's going to come across, and you can't really necessarily do that so much with 2 or 3 posters. So trailer massively elevated it and gave it a buzz, you know. But all of those things help as well. It really is like a package. One doesn't really, I can't do a trailer and not have a poster, you know, so, and even then with the posters, you know, as soon as we were in cinemas, I found a company that would print like quad sizes and things like that, and that was to see those in print and then get those out to the cinema, like, oh wow, you know, for an indie film, they were really pleased to have those physical things as well, you know.
Presumably, like, as you're going through this whole campaign, that there's all these little details and these little things that you learn that you probably you wouldn't have to know, or you'd never know unless you'd done it. So like knowing what a quad poster is, knowing who can make a quad poster, making a DCP, you know, all of those things. presumably they're sort of weird little pockets of specific knowledge that kind of come up.
They came up. It was originally my idea of the posters, because I was thinking, well, any of the film that's in the cinema, you would not naturally see a poster. So I'm like, well, how do I get a quad poster out? And these venues, do they have somewhere to put a quad poster? So I think I got something like 10 or 20 printed to start with. And then again, that was one of the reasons I started an online Welshman store. So I don't know if anybody's seen that, but we did T-shirts and posters. And I think I got an extra 10 printed and got Owain to sign these cinema posters so that they were special. And then we sold those, and they ended up paying for the cinema distribution, you know? Yeah. So things like that were, again, learning curves and just things that kind of came about. So then I would contact, say, the venue, like Bangor or Aberystwyth, and say, if I send you a quad poster, have you got somewhere to put it? Yes, absolutely, we'll put it up. Yeah. Great. That's what I want people to walk in and be able to see. Yeah. You know, if people that haven't seen it online or like we've been talking about in papers and stuff, and they walk in the cinema and they might go, oh, what's that? And again, yeah, so it's another level again that maybe I hadn't thought of prior to the cinema saying yes. It was like another thing in my head of, okay, so then we sent out the A3 posters to everybody, and then anybody that said yes, they had somewhere to put a quad. Because I did a portrait and a landscape, because some people are different.
It does change,
And I think 99% of the venues all had a quad.
Yeah. And again, for the audience, it's that thing where you go, oh, this is like the really expensive films.
Yeah, it's legit. It's happening. It's real. So, you know, it's big budget or whatever. Yeah, you know? So there were things that were just learnt along the way. I loved every minute of that, though. You know, finding different things or something else I've not thought about, and then even getting the film out to venues was a problem solved for me, because I was like, well, how do I DCP, like you said? Luckily, someone in great guy, I think Gaz is his name. Right. Correct me if I'm wrong. Gaz is his name, and he did the DCP for me, because I didn't have I tried, and I'm quite technical minded, but it just blew my mind. I was like, I can't do this. You know, I'm going to mess it up, and it's just going to be wrong. And then by the time it had gone to Aberystwyth Cinema, they'd made a DCP for me and said, we'll put it on USB if you want it. And I was like, yes. You know, again, local cinemas, Welsh people, it's like, that would have cost me probably $1,000 to go and have it done, you know, or hours of headache for me trying to do it on my own. So that I was really, really grateful for that. And then as the dates ramped up, I was like, how do I get this thing out to them? So we ended up buying, I think it was 4 or 5 USBs that were big enough to hold it, so that I could not have too many, because I think at one point there was like 12 cinemas, so that I could rotate them and know where my film was, because that was a thing as well. I didn't want to be posting something out and then that USB sit in the cinema or in the bin, or someone goes, oh, what's this? And then for me as a filmmaker is out there for anybody to kind of, you know, take or watch or whatever. So I thought, if I do it on 5 USBs and I rotate them, and I send one out this week and another one to that venue, by the time the other one's back, because the venues are great at posting them back to me, I would have enough to, you know what I mean? So that even things like that were little things I had never thought about that I would have to problem solve it, you know. No, but that worked quite well. And it's a great learning experience. I was going to say, like, also it's the kind of thing that it's like, at least it is possible now, because in the days of like things being on prints, it would have just been it would have cost a fortune, wouldn't it, to do it independently. You just wouldn't have been able to do it. No.
I was going to ask about, was there any, I'm assuming probably not, but was there any concern about the film's running time? Because it's essentially you've marketed it as a feature, and it's been successful as a feature. Yeah. But was that ever a concern, that because it's sort of short of
38 minutes? So it wasn't, you know, and I thought it would be when venues found out it was only like 40 minutes, say. But they all just were like, let's do a Q&A with it, you know, and then that's an extra 20 minutes. And on 1 or 2 occasions, I forget his last name, and I'm really sorry, but Oshan is a great animator. Yeah. He made a short film to add in, and on a few occasions people asked, could we show that alongside it?
Course,
absolutely, great.
We've shown that in chapters.
What a great to have a few films, you know, run alongside it. I'm happy with that. That's great. You know, more filmmakers coming together. So a few venues did that as well, and then we do a Q&A after, and it kind of stretched the evening out to maybe an hour and a half. Then, you know, by the time people had sat down, and it's like going to watch a feature. So it wasn't really an issue. People seemed to like, I guess, that it gave more options to do Q&As or have extra film show alongside it or whatever.
Yeah. I'm guessing there were quite substantial Q&As. My experience is when there's any kind of political or historical element to the film presentation, the Q&As are often very engaged.
Absolutely.
The people have come in with opinions and knowledge and passion. And
I was worried about that because I'm not overly politically minded. I'm not... I just don't express myself very well in that way. And I'm a filmmaker, you know. And I knew, obviously, it is a political topic. And I was concerned going into Q&As that maybe that's how they would be. But to be fair, there might have been one or two political questions, but it was more about the film, and people were really excited to what you can do with it next, and how does Owain feel about it, and really wanted to know the gossip behind some of the making of it and things like that. And Chapter was one of my favourite Q&As for that because Claire is such a film fanatic. She just asked me filming questions, the whole thing, you know, it was great. It felt really indulgent.
That's good. So, it's good, but it can be, it's a lot to sort of handle, isn't it?
Yeah, normally it's a mixed bag, you know, and I like that as well, but that was my only concern was, as a filmmaker, how do I talk politically about something that really I'm maybe not comfortable talking about, you know? Yeah.
Again, we're looking back from the hindsight that it went okay.
It went fine. It was fine. It went fine.
I was going to ask, also as this sort of theatrical tour was doing so well and building as well, did you, presumably there was a conscious point where you thought, we will keep the film off the internet to preserve the kind of theatrical window? Like, or was that
absolutely, again, because of lockdown, and like I said, I didn't want to just do a month of like cinema release because I knew that cinemas were still coming back and opening. And I'm a massive indie cinema fan, you know, I really am a big fan, so I wanted to give cinemas the chance to show it as well, and if it's already been online, then there's not as much hype to see it or want to see it on the big screen, you know. So it was a conscious effort to not put it online. Literally, it was exclusive for local cinemas for almost a year, I think it was in the end. To kind of, you know, generate revenue and get those cinemas back up and going, and also it was nice for our film just to only be in the cinemas. So it was a conscious effort for it not to be online and just have it be on the big screen. And
again, it's another thing that makes it feel special and makes it feel...
you can only see it in the cinema. Great.
And I mean, a year is long for any film to be out now. I mean, they used to happen years ago, but when did you start thinking about what were the next steps and next phases for the release? How do you sort of navigate that?
I think going back to the beginning, Pwllheli Cinema was one of the first cinemas that raised an interest in the film, but they were under renovations, and so I knew it was going to. They said to me it could be like December time. I was like, fine, no problem. By the time most of the cinema run had come to an end, which I think was end of September, early October, I was thinking, ooh, when's Pwllheli Cinema going to open? And it wasn't until February that they opened. So I decided that's the finale, the big finale would be Pwllheli Cinema, really. Owain's hometown. I knew he would come. I knew it would sell out. I just knew COVID was gone and it sold out, I think, 2 nights. Or maybe 3 nights, or 2 nights in an afternoon or something. And that was what I was just holding on for, was that final cinema and that finale. And then after that, the whole time I've been thinking, what do I do with it? When we've come to the final cinema screening, where do I go? Because Netflix, Prime, things like that, they're a black hole. And if you've not got an agent, it is like a black hole, trying to get hold of somebody, trying to get it out there, trying to get anybody to pay attention to it is really difficult. And I'm still in that stage where I'm like, where do I ended up doing an Eventbrite because I got so many people asking, can we see the film? And I just thought Eventbrite's great because it's a one night only. Right. You can't view it after that. You can view it online for literally the time, for 40 minutes, you know, and then you're done. So we did that. I think we ended up doing 2 different screenings in one day. I think like an afternoon and an evening screening or something. so I knew it had some people had managed to see it online,
Yeah.
but I didn't overly promote it too much either. I just wanted it to be the people that really wanted to see it, if they're in America or Canada, because there's a Chicago group, you know, that were desperate to see it, then they would at least have a chance to see it.
And people, I guess, who couldn't go to cinemas.
Things like that, just so it was a bit of a fair shot, but it wasn't taken away from cinemas and taken away from like a Netflix showing either. So we did that as well, but I'm still in that point now where I'm like, how do I need an agent to really get it online, I think, is where I'm at. And again, Amazon Prime, up until, this is not an exaggeration, the day before I was about to submit it to Amazon Prime, because you could do that as an indie, as a documentary, you could submit and you could self-distribute on Amazon. They would get something like 50%, you would get 50%. Happy days for me, like the film's out there, people can watch it, great. Honestly, the day before I was about to submit it, they pulled that indies can do it.
It was a big change, wasn't it?
It was a massive change. And I was like, I could not believe my luck. I thought, you are kidding me. So that happened. So that otherwise it would be on Prime now.
Right.
Prime would have been my choice. So yeah, anybody knows, anybody on Netflix, give me a shout. But yeah, at the minute I don't know. It's going to be 60 years since Tryweryn in February.
Right.
So I'm thinking that could be something that...
An
anniversary to get it online, maybe. Whether that's Vimeo or YouTube. As long as it's out there, I think by next year, I mean, it'd be 2 years since we announced the Welshman in February. So I think that's a good enough run for it now, maybe to go online.
But I can also imagine it coming, to more screenings.
Yeah, maybe,
well.
and I'm happy for that to happen. And I should say as well, we did put it out on DVD as a limited, we did 100 copies in the end.
Right.
So only 100 copies. I think Owain signed 60 of them.
Yeah.
So that, and they were all hand numbered. So
again, these exclusives.
So it just feels special, and it's not sort of taken for granted. It's like. There's only good. At first, I think I did 50, and that many people, they sold out like in 2 days, and I was like, what's the point of me just doing 50 if 100's going to sell and people are happy and they're going to buy them? So we did 100, and then Owain signed them, hand numbered, and they felt special then, and that's it. There will be no more, and they're out there. They've sold out, and the next step is getting it. Yeah. Obviously online.
I mean, it feels like obviously it can kind of have a continuing and long life because of the quality of the film and because of the history it's connected to. And I was also going to ask, has the BAFTA Cymru Award, has that changed things? It
has for me as a filmmaker, definitely. And I think, do you know what was strange? We got the announcement that we got nominated for BAFTA happened during the cinema run. And people's reactions to the film changed massively when they knew we'd been nominated for a BAFTA. They were way more relaxed about the film, seemed to enjoy it more, which is weird, like reacting to things that maybe audiences prior to hadn't, or maybe been like, oh, am I allowed to laugh there? Because anybody that's seen it is quite, there's funny moments in it, Owain's a funny guy, he's quite comedic. So obviously I played to that. So there are a few, maybe 3 or 4 moments that deserve a bit of a giggle. Yeah. And on some occasions there was a bit like, are we allowed to giggle? Is that supposed to be funny? Whereas as soon as we had the BAFTA nom, it was like roars of laughter, at places where and that felt nice, obviously. So it changed strangely a little bit. That's really
interesting. I'm not sure what the lessons are, but to know that just like the perception and the enjoyment of the film.
Yeah, it changed. It's almost like it gave them, I don't know, the go-ahead that it was... I don't know. It was recognised. I don't know, strange. But for me as a filmmaker, it has. Obviously, I've been directing more films since. The Welshman was my first big leap into directing like a film of this kind and of this length. Any films I've done before were sort of 5 to 10 minutes. Always done music videos, always done editing, but never really directed a project like this. So since this, I've found more work, or people coming to me to ask, would you direct this? Do you want to do this? Do you want to do that? So that, for me as a filmmaker, it's been amazing. Yeah. And it's really, for me again, really special to have a BAFTA for this film specifically, because it was no budget. It's a family film as well. It's obviously my partner's dad. Yeah. So it feels really close. So to be able to go into their house and go, we got nominated for a BAFTA, is really special. To then have them all sat at home watching the BAFTAs and we win is really special, you know. It's more than just that. It's more than just for me. Yeah. It's for all of them as well, you know. So that for it to happen with this film specifically is really special, definitely.
Brilliant. And no, it's amazing. I don't know if this is a silly question, but like, now you've, on this whole experience, this sort of 2-year plus experience, you've got all this knowledge, all these sort of, you know, all the secret codes and all the, you know, all the contacts and stuff like that. And would you, when you think about future projects, do you think you'll be doing something like this again, or do you think that was kind of a one-time deal, or maybe you'll apply aspects of it? I don't know.
Definitely apply aspects. I'm in a mindset as well as I know what the Welshman is as well. For indie filmmakers that are making films, like I've made films prior, and I'm like, who's going to gravitate towards this? But that's part of the thing of being a filmmaker as well, is finding a bit of a niche, is what I'm learning. I didn't know that before. I'm just like, I wanted to make the film I want to make, which you can do, but I think it's really important if you can find your own personal experience. Like for me, the Welshman is a personal experience because it's so close to home. So maybe that's why the film it feels quite accessible. People really feel like they're getting to know Owain because he's as relaxed as he can be in the room with family members. Yeah. Does that make sense? So it's translating in a different way. And the film I made prior, Bound, is my coming out story. So it was really personal. So as a filmmaker, I'm finding the more that you can do to really just give it your perspective. Only you've got your like absolute perspective on something. Yeah. So to find it, that's your niche really. So yeah, I know that the Welshman is a niche project completely. The time that we are in Wales right now, the subject matter with Owain, I know that it's like you just said, it's got longevity maybe because of that, and other films might not. So we're lucky in that way. But definitely, I've just made another film, like I said earlier, and I'm already thinking of the things I'd done with the Welshman have been put in place now. And even though I'm not the one distributing it, I'm orchestrating it so they can distribute it in that kind of way. And they're like, oh, great, yeah, let's do this and let's do that. And they're really positive towards the way, like all the images and the way it's set out for people to view and get out there and things like that. They're really pleased with, you know. So yeah, there's so many things I've learned. I'm like, oh, we could do this and we could do that, and they're like, oh yeah, you know. So yeah, it's something I'm carrying with definitely to try and get films out there again like that. Yeah, definitely.
Brilliant. And I mean, I think it sounds like you know what you want to do with yourself and your career. Do people come and ask you for advice about their films, how to get their films? I mean, they should. I mean, I don't want to get you spammed, but like, if you have given advice, or if you would give advice to filmmakers with their own projects, is there sort of advice that you've sort of learned to give or would give?
I don't think any one of my filmmaker friends has come to me yet. Maybe they will. Advice I would give, again, like I said a second ago, would be to really look inside and just try and... That's the most successful thing, if you can really make it personal, because that is then its own niche, you know. I tried it over the years with I used to love poetry and I love making weird films. So I was like, oh, let's make an experimental poetic film. I did that like on a phone, and it was, for me, it was like one of the best little films I'd ever made. So that's just because it came from my point of view, as opposed to making something because you think it's going to do well, or you think it's going to make money, or you think whatever. Yeah. Don't do it for any of those reasons. Do it for you and your own personal sort of experience. That would be the biggest advice, I think. Yes. And then when it comes to marketing wise, just ask. Yeah. Just ask, and people will 9 times out of 10 say yes. You know, if you want to get it in cinemas, or you want to get it out there, it is cost effective now. Like we were saying, it's not on film. Get a couple of USBs, a couple of posters printed. If you're in a lucky position that you've got editing software and you've edited the film, or you can put together a trailer or whatever. Just do all those things that you would normally see for any film that you see out there. Just do it on your scale, you know, and get things out there as well as you can. And yeah, absolutely. Brilliant. I think that is very good advice. Well, I'm genuinely, I think whenever your film and you come up, they're both spoken about with, you know, respect and enthusiasm and passion from film exhibition and filmmakers as well. So congratulations. Thank you very much. Thank you very much for the conversation as well. Oh, thank you for having me. Cheers.